Hi, my name is Courtney, and for my author-illustrator study, I decided to research Chris Van Allsburg. Chris was born in Grand Rapids, Michigan in 1949, where he grew up on an old farm next to a big creamery, which his grandfather later owned. He went to high school and graduated in Michigan and decided to go to the University of Michigan for an art degree, which he had never previously studied before. He graduated from the University of Michigan with a degree in architecture and design, which is the art degree, and moved on to get his master's at the University of Rhode Island, where he got his master's degree in sculpture. From then, he got married to a woman he met back at the University of Michigan, who helped him decide to send his drawings and artworks that he began to do into a publisher. The publisher decided that he liked his work, and he told them that instead of trying to illustrate somebody else's book, try to illustrate and write your own book. So he began writing and drawing and illustrating, and since then has created 15 works of his own and also illustrated for 3 books by Mark Helpner. He got many Caldecott awards for Jumanji and the Polar Express, and also for his very first book, he got many awards as well. The 4 books that I decided to read for Chris Van Allsburg were The Stranger, which is about a man who comes across a family on a farm, and this man doesn't speak and he doesn't talk to anybody, and the family takes him in and he becomes part of their own. But the family soon realizes that since this man has been around, the trees around the farm won't change from green to fall. It's summer, and all the trees around the farm turn to orange, but their trees do not. And you get a sense that this man has something to do with the seasons and the weather, and the man realizes that while he's there, the trees won't turn, so he has to leave. And every year after that, the trees stay green all around the farm, and the other trees turn orange, and then 2 weeks later, overnight, they turn a brilliant orange, and in frost on the windows, it says, "See you next fall." The second book that I read was called The Widow's Broom, and this is about an old widow named Minna Shaw who comes across a witch and a broom in her garden, and the witch abandons the broom because it's apparently lost its magical powers. But one day Minna Shaw wakes up and she realizes that the broom is doing things on its own. It's sweeping, it's chopping wood, it's doing the chores around the house, and the neighbors see this and they think that it's dangerous and it's wicked and that Minna Shaw needs to burn it. So Minna Shaw doesn't want to do this, but she has to come up with a plan. So she takes the broom out and wraps it up in rope and burns it, and the neighbors watch. And one night, Minna Shaw reports that she sees the ghost of the broom walking around with an axe because it's upset. And the neighbors don't believe her, so they sit up one night and they watch, and they see the ghost of the broom walking around closer and closer to the houses. And the neighbors all get scared and they move out of town, and at the very end of the book, you see the broom tapping the old woman on the shoulder, and Minna Shaw says, "Good work, broom, you play very nice," and she knows that the broom is good, so she painted it white to look like a ghost. The third book that I decided to read was Two Bad Ants. This story is about an army of ants who travel through a big forest and into a big area that they don't know what it is, and they get these crystals, and they take it back to their queen ant to make her happy. The two bad ants say, "Well, why do we have to keep going back there when we could stay here in this big vat of crystals and be full and live happy?" So they decide to stay in the crystals. And one day, a big scoop comes and scoops them up and puts them in this big lake of brown water. It's boiling brown water, and then a big giant thing makes the lake go down, and they crawl down the cup, and they get into a toaster, and they get into an electrical socket, and all these things that we as human beings find not bad at all, but that the ants find absolutely horrifying. So at the end of the story, the ants realize that there's really no place like home, and they decide to go back to their queen ant. The fourth book that I decided to read was The Sweetest Fig, And this was about a mean old dentist man who had a very nice little puppy. And one day the dentist does some work for an old woman, and the old woman can't pay. So she pays him in 2 figs and says, "These are magical figs. They'll make all your dreams come true." The man doesn't believe him. He goes home, is grumpy, kicks his dog, tells him he's mean, not a good puppy, and does mean things to the dog, and eats a fig and goes to sleep. He dreams that night that he walks around downtown in his underwear, and the Eiffel Tower breaks, and all these bad things. Wakes up the next day, goes to take his dog for a walk, and realizes that everybody's staring at him, and he doesn't understand why. He goes to a shop window, and he sees that he's in nothing but his underwear. He runs to the Eiffel Tower, and it has in fact been broken. So the man believes that these figs are magical. So he works on hypnosis, and every night before bed he talks to himself and he says, "I'm the richest man on earth, I'm the richest man on earth, I'm the richest man on earth." And he starts to dream that he's the richest man on earth. And one day he tells the puppy, "You're not coming with me when I'm rich, because I want Great Danes and not little bull terriers." And that night he plans to eat the fig so that he'll be the richest man on earth the next day. He sets up the fig on a plate on the table and goes to get something from the kitchen when the puppy jumps up and eats the fig. That night, after the man is furious with the dog, they both go to bed and they wake up the next morning. And Monsieur Bebo, who's the angry man, realizes that for some reason he's underneath his bed. He opens his eyes and he sees a big hand that reaches down to get him. He tries to scream for help, but all he can do is bark. For my expansion, I chose to do it on The Stranger. I like this book because it talks about the seasons and things that we go through in our daily lives with the leaves changing and that. But it uses a man to portray the changing of the seasons and personifies what a season would be if it were a person in a way. And so I got to thinking, if this man represented a season and the farmer didn't realize quite what the message was, what would happen after fall? So my expansion is what happens next. It was the time of winter Farmer Bailey liked best. It was the time when he could drive the back roads and admire all the sparkling snow on the trees. He whistled as he drove along. Then, again, it happened. There was a loud thump. Mr. Bailey jammed on his brakes. "Oh no," he thought, "I've hit a deer." But it wasn't a deer Mr. Bailey found when he got out of his truck. It was a man, small and muscular, with bright white hair. Thank you very much.